all the folks, the thousands of people around Ladbroke Grove and the Grenfell Tower area are demanding some arrests. They're saying, well, we're not just going to let the police get away with pretending to do an investigation, and when they come across powerful people that might have made money out of this and be responsible for cost cutting that's led to that block of flats being turned into a death trap, they're not just going to let it lie. And of course there is a parallel in a way with this kind of inquiry that's being launched supposedly, although it doesn't look as if the locals are happy with that either. I mean, what disgusts me, and maybe you can just reflect on this as well, Cleo, is that it's a horrific tragedy, just as something like 7/7 was. One is an accident, the other one deliberate by somebody. But it almost seems as if immediately people are having to then suffer again and again and again, whether it be through being given derisory offers of alternative housing by Kensington and Chelsea Council, or just simply by being asked to sign a waiver. You know, here's some money, you're in shock, here's a bit of money, but by the way, one of the dotted lines in the small print says you will never be able to sue us again in the future.
It's wholly inadequate and absolutely horrendous. It's very hard to comprehend, really. It just shows that how people are marginalised, and again it kind of feeds into the fear of gentrification. It's unlikely that many of these people will be able to be housed locally in their communities, which is going to add to the trauma. Some people have been offered accommodation in Preston, and there's documents circling to say that there were plans anyway to demolish in that area. And I know people from the Westway project who have been clinging on to community centres and nurseries and being quite vocal about it, that there's the big sell-off of community assets, and people are being pinched, and if you don't fit to people's standards, if you haven't got the money in the bank and etc., then you're getting pushed out.
The incident itself has brought home the inadequacy of housing policy. I mean, when that building went up in the 1970s, there was still a commitment to having mixed-use communities with wealthy people living on the same streets as poorer people, and that was the way that Britain ran. And we've gradually destroyed that step by step over decades, and we're moving to a US-style system where, you know, the poor in Los Angeles live kilometres away from the wealthy. Well, and that's not really the British way, or it wasn't traditionally.
I suppose what I'm saying here is justice going to be done? Looks like no, it's not going to be done. And of course this is rubbing salt into the wounds for people living around Ladbroke Grove. There is very little coverage of it, but I managed to grab a bit of audio of some of the victims of the 7/7 London bombings at the end of the inquest. People were hoping that they would have their questions answered, that they would be able to speak at the inquest. The survivors and the victims' families found that they weren't. So let's just have a listen now to some of the people speaking after the end of the inquest into the 7/7 London bombings.
We have questions that need answering. We were allowed to submit some questions to the Intelligence and Security Committee, but those questions were not answered. Our role now will be one of answering questions only, which we will do willingly, but our questions are not going to be answered. Again, we've been shunted aside by officialdom. It's very important that we all remember that the inquests are for the families and the loved ones of those who died. But this is our only voice. We've been led to believe that this would be an opportunity for us to have a voice, and no, we don't.
Pretty horrific, Martin. Even after going through this public inquiry, the lady there who lost, I think it was either her sister or her daughter in the 7/7 bombings, just found that the inquiry didn't really help.
Well, there's a big question mark over inquiries in this country in general since the 2005 Inquiries Act, which basically allows the government to control the basic outline of the inquiry. Inquiries, in theory, traditionally used to be run by the judiciary, but the 2005 Act has certainly tightened that up. And there was always a question mark about whether these inquiries were genuine and independent anyway. I mean, the first inquiry into Bloody Sunday was a whitewash, and then they had to have another one because the first one was not adequate. And I'm afraid British inquiries have got a reputation around the world for being obfuscation and basically trying to hide the truth.
Yeah, so what do you make of that? But it's pretty harrowing audio, actually, isn't it? Listening to someone who's been promised that this is going to be their opportunity to ask questions of the people who allowed the 7/7 bombings to take place. Of course, they lied. MI5 lied. They said initially that the bombers were all clean skins, and during the during the inquest and during other trials, it came out that actually they had massive files on them. We've been following them for years. Those sort of lies can really hurt. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be quite the same secrecy in the Grenfell thing, but it doesn't really bode well, does it?
No, it doesn't. And there's a lot of scepticism. Obviously, there's a backlash against the judge who's been chosen to head this inquiry or whatever. And
well, for good reason, because he was actually involved in a case saying that it was okay for. Well, not quite. I was going to use the word deport one of the people who lived in Kensington and Chelsea out of the borough, out of London, even I think up to Milton Keynes. So that was okay, so we can rehouse you in Milton Keynes, and that's fine. This judge said. Now, of course, this is like a red rag to a bull to people who live around there.
Mm. Yeah, it is, and I think communication lines are very important from what I can tell at arm's length looking through the media and social media, and I do follow some of the community activists and leaders down there, such as Ishmael Blagrove, who's also calling for calm, that the response has been very slow, and even now the communication lines between the council and the people on the ground just aren't very good.
And I've seen actually some good and some not so good. But actually, it's almost like the London media TV people at Channel 4 and Newsnight have almost woken up out of their slumber, having occasionally a few good programmes, actually getting some ordinary people on talking about what's been going on. Mm.